Hello, everyone, and welcome to an exciting episode of Paranormal Versus. For all of our fans out there, this is unusual that I'm leading us into the show, as Kell was asked me to lead this one. So I was like, cool, I'll take a shot.
Yeah. Hello, everybody.
So, welcome everyone, and tonight or this afternoon, from wherever you're watching us from, we have a very exciting guest with us, Father Ken Torres.
Well, I wouldn't know about exciting. I wouldn't say all that, but I'll definitely give my best to be entertaining.
Well, I
Excellent.
mean, it's not every day you get to have someone with your background on our show, and we're excited to hear about that and what all that means actually.
Yeah, yeah. So, a little bit about myself. Father Ken Torres. I have a doctorate in divinity. I have a real religious degree. I went to seminary for 10 years. I have a master's in pastoral counseling. I have a bachelor's in finance and accounting. I am a retired U.S. Marine Corps veteran, infantry, Iraq War veteran, former government contractor, worked for the government for many years. But throughout all of that, I grew up in church and I grew up in ministry most of my life. And as I got older, I realized that, there was a lot of my disabilities that were stopping me from doing certain things. I couldn't work anymore. So I became medically retired. And so I decided, what is it that I need to do in life? And so I prayed, and divine intervention was like, hey, go back to college, get your degrees. And now I run the Solomonic Order of St.Michael The Archangel. We are a legitimate certified nonprofit here in California, a religious nonprofit here in California. It's a religious order, independent Catholic. And I am also a board member and a division director for the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research. And the Warren Legacy Foundation was created in 2014 by Lorraine Warren and her grandson, Chris McKinnell. And so the idea was an international outreach team. So now we have a network of dedicated professionals worldwide, over 100 members that assist clients for free. We help clients out for free with paranormal activity. We generally work on darker cases, demonic possession, poltergeists, just negative energies. But, the 3 years that I've been with the foundation, I've done about 200 cases. And I would say 95% of that has been mental illness. The other 4% has been unexplained phenomena. And then the 0.1% has been, one exorcism that I've had to conduct. Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow.
So that is me in a nutshell.
How do
And
you
then,
have to do all of that?
well, I manage my time wisely. I wake up in the morning, I check my emails. The good thing about being a director now, being a leader, is I have other team members that, are qualified to handle cases. So my job is essentially, when these cases come in, I pick the team who I think best suits that profile, and they work the cases and they report back to me. Most of the times I will sit on the cases, but I've got a really good team that I trust. And so, yeah, it just makes it a little easier with the day-to-day operations. And then I also do chaplaincy. So while my guys are working on their chaplaincy, when my guys are working on their cases, I do the chaplaincy as well at home, pastoral counseling. So yeah, I don't know how I do it. It's a miracle, but I'm grateful every day that I get the opportunity to help people in their life in a spiritual manner as well.
So, one question I have for you that I think is rather unique is you were formerly an infantryman. Do you bring
Correct.
any of that into your paranormal studies or
Yeah,
cases?
for me, an infantryman, grunt, I can't really bring explosives and things that go boom into the cases, but uh, my background with the military and the government has given me a unique ability to be able to profile people, be able to tell when they're lying, being able to detect certain things within their pattern behavior. Kind of just like if they're going to jump or if they're going to lunge at me, that type of stuff. It's a certain trait. It just gives me an upper hand, and I'm able to read people. That's the word. I'm able to read people a little more better. Not in a psychic sense, but I can study their behavior and tell whether or not, this person is lying, this person is being truthful, this person's going to, run right now, so yeah.
Wow, that's a good skill to have.
Yeah.
So you mentioned being part of the Solomic Order of St.Michael the Archangel. Can you explain
Correct.
what exactly that is for those of us who may not be aware?
So the Solomonic Order of St. Michael the Archangel is a religious order. It is also a registered nonprofit here in California. We are an independent Catholic religious order, meaning we are not affiliated with the Vatican. As a matter of fact, we are excommunicated with the Vatican because we don't support their child abuse, their child molestation. And we also believe that our priests should be married. If the priests were married, according to the Holy See, then we would have less problems with that. Also, I am a big fan of loving other people. So I don't care what your sexual preference is. I don't care who you worship. I don't care who you love. If you want mass, if you want communion, if you want a prayer, if you want baptism, I'm going to do it, whether or not that's according to the canon law. I'm going to do it because I believe everyone. I believe honestly we're all children of the Creator, and everyone has that right to be able to receive that sacrament of the Eucharist, the sacrament of blessing. As a matter of fact, our order, which was founded by now passed away Archbishop Vendega, he was a Catholic priest, and he was excommunicated from the Vatican because he stood up against the sexual molestation, and they excommunicated him. Same thing with my former prior general, Archbishop Matthew Rawcliffe. He's now retired of the cloth. He's our consultant. He also was a Catholic priest, and he tried standing up against the sexual misconduct of the church, and he also was miscommunicated. So what we have done is we are following an independent Catholic movement that is, you can see worldwide now that we are not part of the Vatican. We are recognized by them because of apostolic succession, and because we follow the Council of the Nicene Creed, but we also do the Council of Trent. So we do the old Latin Mass as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what brought St. Michael as your guys' saint of choice to follow?
Well, when I came into the order, I that was already the patron saint, and so I decided to keep that tradition because Archbishop Vendega passed away, and there was apostolic succession, and he wanted us to keep the order the same. Saint Michael the Archangel is one of the most powerful angels out there when it comes to the supernatural, when it comes to fighting evil, when it comes to fighting demonic entities. So that is our patron saint because of what he symbolizes. He was the one that cast Lucifer out of hell. And so we believe that St. Michael the Archangel is just, befitting for the work that we do.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me. I couldn't think of a better one.
Yeah, I mean, we've thought about like other names, but the truth is, it just fits right. Unfortunately, I am an exorcist, and there's nothing good about that. I didn't want to be one, but I was tapped to be it by my old predecessors. And so I personally felt St. Michael the Archangel protect me during my rituals of exorcism. And I constantly feel, not only that, but Mother Mary, Jesus Christ, all around me. But just I have a connection with St. Michael the Archangel because he is a warrior, and I'm a warrior myself. And so was, former Archbishop Matthew Rawcliffe. He is a veteran as well, too.
Okay, and last question about this, I promise. Then we'll switch sides to another thing.
It's all right.
Solomic, so that means following King Solomon's wisdom, correct?
Well, that's an interesting question that I don't know the answer to. I've never even looked that up. I do know that it has to do with something along those lines, but from what I remember, what I was told, it's that was just a name that was available to us, and so the Solomonic part is supposed to be initially the correlation to the Knights Templar. The Solomonic part was supposed to be our connection to the Knights Templar, going out and doing good, going out and doing certain things. Although when you look at history, there isn't a lot of good things that have been done in the name of Christianity, but that's not who we are. But that is what where the Solomonic part comes in.
Okay.
Huh.
And so, what made you decide? You kind of touched on it a little bit, but what really brought you to choosing this path, this order, wearing the cloth that you wear?
As a veteran, I dealt a lot with depression, anxiety, PTSD. Yeah, I dealt with mental health issues. I dealt with alcohol abuse. I dealt with substance abuse in the past. But throughout it all, I had a really good support system. I always had a faith in the church, in God, in Christ Jesus, whatever you want to call it. And for that was my way of being saved, so to speak. There was just something that was just nudging away at me that said that no matter what I was doing in life, everything that else I was doing, it didn't make any sense. And one day I just prayed, and I remembered a message when I was young in church. My old pastor said that one day you're going to be a man of the cloth, and you are going to preach to the world. And so, but that was more Protestant, Pentecostal. But I fell in love with the Catholic theology. I was taught to hate it my whole life, but I fell in love with it. And to me, 2,000-year-old church tradition will always outweigh several hundred years of Protestant belief systems. Nothing against my Protestant brothers and sisters. I believe that we're all part of the body of Christ in that retrospect. But I identified more with being Catholic. And so when I went to seminary school, I took the Catholic theology courses, and I became ordained as a Catholic priest and an interfaith minister, because as a doctorate of divinity, it is my job to understand different beliefs and different religions from around the world.
Okay. So, being, as you say, kind of what we would call demonologist and exorcist, what exactly are the differences between the two, or are they alike? And do you feel a lot of the people out there that are calling themselves that are, misleading people, or following their path, and that's fine?
That's a twofold question. I can't speak on behalf of other people, but I have made this analysis. There are people out there that are really talented and they are really gifted, and they study demonology because they want to understand the characteristics and the traits of these demons. And I believe that somewhere in their heart they want to help other people, and that's a wonderful thing. And on the other hand, we obviously have people that just use the title just so they can sound cool, so they can put up a black and white Facebook profile pic and say, I'm a demonologist, when they don't understand the psychology, the behavior, the mechanisms of how demons operate. And so I would say that is my answer right there. Twofold question. And
Right.
then the other part was as an exorcist. As an exorcist, yeah, I mean, it is my job to be able to identify when there really is a demonic infestation, when there is a full-on possession. And that also means that you do have to understand the traits and the characteristics of, how demons operate and demons work. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to know their name right up front, because during the ritual, through the spiritual authority that you receive, through the grace of God, they'll eventually reveal their name to you. But it's also important to understand how they operate. So I think the work goes hand in hand, but it's a little different because as a demonologist, you are giving me more information and you're giving me research on these types of entities, which is wonderful in its nature, but that doesn't mean that you're equipped to combat it on a spiritual level.
Right. So I like how you put it, that people, even though they don't have the titles and may not have done the studies like you did,
Yeah.
are gifted. And so do you come across in your cases where people have been, identifying themselves as, and you do you test them to see if their gifts are legit to use, or do you go,
No,
okay,
honestly, man, here's my thing. You know, just because I have all these accolades and I have this experience and I have these degrees and titles, honestly, it's not my job to disprove people. You can always tell when a person has good intent, and you can always tell when a person has good energy. And so, no, I definitely don't test people. I'm not here to test people. I'm not here to prove people wrong. I'm here to work with other people who are like-minded like me, who are trying to help the client out, with this solution. So if you tell me you're a psychic, you know what? I'm going to believe you. I have no reason to not believe you. I'm not. I'm not. I don't have the gift of knowing whether or not you're a psychic. I don't care about that. What I care about is how can we work together to make sure that this client is going to be better after we leave this home. So whether you're a shaman, whether you're a different belief system, whether you're a Reiki master, that stuff means nothing to me. What I judge you is by the fruits of your labor. Are you a good person, and are you there for the right reasons?
being someone like from my background, I could appreciate that because I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of times in the paranormal field, people are like, well, you don't have this background. So yeah, we're going to discount you and we're going to go do this. So I appreciate that you are willing to work with
Yeah.
people and take them at their word and,
Yeah.
accept them as they are. And Scott brings up a good point. And I'm curious of your take on this. They feel the word demon is used too much in the paranormal field, especially in the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree with you, Scott. The demonic word is, the demonic word, Greek origin, demos, intelligent being, has been used a lot in the paranormal field. And I think that's where this shows the type of investigator you are. It shows the experience you've got. Because we do know, excuse the French, if you're an asshole in life, you're an asshole in death. Because human spirits have free will, and they can portray themselves to be something that they're not. So it's not always negative. And even negative energy doesn't mean that it's a demon. It doesn't mean that. So yes, I do feel like the word demon is used around. It's tossed around so much. And the issue with that is you have to put it in a client's perspective. If you have a client that is dealing with a mental illness, or let's say they believe that there is a demonic entity in their house, and it isn't. Maybe they have psychic abilities or they're displaying poltergeist activities. They have these gifts that they don't know. What you're doing, and this is my doctoral analysis, is you're adding another psychological layer of stress on that individual. So you don't want to do that. So this could have been the catalyst. This could have been the cherry on the pie that's going to be like, oh, so and so said I have a demon. I don't know what to do, and I'm going to go ahead and blow my head off, which I've had that happen before.
Wow.
I've
And,
had somebody commit suicide. I've had somebody commit suicide because another team who was amateur say, well, there's a demon. No, there isn't a demon. We got to get the psychological evaluation. We got to get the physical evaluation. Well, I'm hearing knocks and sounds. Okay, but let us do our thing. Next thing, a few days later, we get a call from the client's friend that they ended their life because the other team told them that it was a demonic infestation, and it wasn't.
right. And that's unfortunate. And I don't like that happens myself. And it kind of brings to light something that I don't know that if I've even told you, Kel. This is, I take the point of when I walk into a building or a location and I feel something off, I don't say demonic because I view it as society. When we say, like, say somebody walks up to you and says, man, your hair looks awful. And like 10 more people walk up to you and go, man, your hair looks awful. You're going to go home thinking, oh my God, I
Yeah.
need to do something with my hair. It's awful.
The power of influence.
Right. And so when we go into locations to where a grumpy or negative spirit just is a bad energy, we go, oh my God, it's demonic. And like several teams come in and go, oh yeah, there's a demon here. that spirit is going to go, well, I'm not a demon, but if you want a demon, I'll give you a demon.
I'll give you a demon. I like it.
On those characteristics.
Yeah, you want to mess around and find out, and that's the thing, these energies, free spirits, free will, so to speak, if they're darker and negative in energy, if they were darker in their human life, in their human form, then yeah, they can certainly act out in a way that would make it seem like, it's demonic. But they also only have so much power. They can't really do the sulfuric smells, and just a different profile analysis when it comes to demonic entities, real ones. But yeah, I mean, I suppose that the word is thrown around a lot, but that's why it's also, we got to be cautious and cognizant of how we use that word.
Right.
I definitely don't like to go to a location with preconceived notions. Okay, maybe the client will say something. Okay, that's fine. But as soon as I get there, I'm just going to block everything out, and I want to be able to find out myself. My job is to be able to think critically, conduct an analysis, gather evidence, and then make my own determination with my team to see on whether or not there really is something there. And I find that most of the cases that say are demonic are not actually demonic.
Right. And Aaron Hoffman in the chat group has a question for you. He says, do you think people are unaware of how intelligent demons are and are reckless with the use of Ouija boards?
Yeah. So Aaron, that's a really good question. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go give you a doctoral evaluation on that. So the problem is not so much the Ouija board. I personally don't like Ouija boards. I don't have a problem with Ouija boards. I have a problem with the individual who's using the Ouija board. If you are not strong, if you are not grounded, if you don't have any experience, if you're not psychically grounded, psychically protected, and you are mentally and emotionally weak, then that's what I have a problem with, because at that point in time, you are vulnerable. And so whatever entity is on the other side of that board can come through. But it goes the same way with conducting an EVP. Spirit communication is spirit communication, just like that, no matter how you look at it. But I don't like the Ouija board. I think it's dangerous. If you're going to use it, make sure that you talk to somebody. Make sure you are with someone reputable that knows and has experience in spirit communication. But you always want to make sure that you're spiritually, psychically protected and grounded.
I totally agree. And Scott, I think, is pointing out something too. An agreement with you. Says, I've been in locations where you feel not wanted, that someone wants you to leave, never demonic.
Yeah.
Trouble is teams say it to look good, get followers, etc., and it's just wrong and makes the rest of us look stupid.
Yeah, that's true. Think of it this way. Kell, Michael, would you like it if you had 500 people coming into your house, knocking on your door, walking through your house, eating your food, people you didn't know? How would that make you feel? Having random strangers come to your house, always bugging and nagging you. And you're just like, okay, I'm upstairs looking down. I have all of these people in my house eating my food, laying down, lounging around, being disrespectful. You wouldn't stand it, would you? Same thing with free will. Same thing with free will, with free spirits.
Yeah. And Stephen Woodard, who actually is the head of our network, he brings up a good point that I think touches on what you were saying. Is he says, honestly, that's where these so-called investigation teams need to take accountability for their actions. He says, honestly, the entire team, or at least the ones involved, should have had criminal charges passed on them.
I agree. And Stephen, thank you for this wonderful network. Thank you for having me on as well with the rest. I agree with you. And that's where for us with the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research is where we're a little different. We try to instill, Eli, we try to instill a sense of ethics and professionalism. We're not saying that we're the best. We're not saying that at all. But we do have high standards on our recruitment process, and we have a strict code of ethics. We have bylaws, and we have strict investigative analysis. Our hope is to hopefully have some of what we do spill over into the paranormal field, to be able to help people. There's a lot of good teams out there that don't have a lot of experience, okay? And sometimes, like, we all make mistakes. We've made mistakes. I don't care who we are. We've made mistakes. But if we can come out here and help the public, educate the public, and educate other teams, like, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. Let's look at a different approach, because what you're doing, you may be putting yourself, your team, and your family at risk. So that's why I think with the foundation, it's different for us, because we have ethics and we do have a strict process of elimination. I myself would not sit alone on an investigation, on a case interview. So the way the process goes, our applicants come in, they fill out a Google form. We set up the interview via Zoom, Skype, Facebook, whatever. And then we have a series of questions. And based upon those series of questions as well, we have other members in that meeting that contribute a different factor, different abilities, different investigative and thought processes. And so we go through a series, an array of questions. And I have found that most of our cases, our intake cases that are allegedly paranormal activity, 90 to 95% of them have been resolved on that call, because we've asked the questions. We've done the rational assessment. Okay, well, have you done this? Have you done that? And most of our intake interviews last about 2 to 3 hours. We go very in detail. We ask personal questions: sexual abuse, drug abuse, trauma. We ask, what medication you're on. We ask for psychological medical evaluation. These are the things that help us determine on whether or not, we're not saying that you're crazy, but we want to make sure that you're mentally able, physical, to even go through with an in-home investigation. But even with that process that we have, we're able to weed out those who are actually catfishing us and those who really need help.
That's a good thing to bring up too, is because I think a lot of times you might get some locations to where they're like, well, the neighbor on both sides of us get all these people coming and they're claiming this and this, and we don't have it, so why don't we have it? And then try to go, oh, well, yeah, we do, because they want the same amount of attention as the others.
Yeah, and that's true. Unfortunately, I've come across cases. So we did a case once. What we thought it was the case. We were helping out one of our directors. We were doing a case, and I'm sorry if I don't look directly into the camera. That's my thought process going. I have a bad habit of doing that. But we had a case where we were interviewing the family, but what we didn't know is that they were interviewing us for a TV show. They were recording us in the background. And so when we got done with that interview, they're like, oh, can you sign these waivers? We were recording you for a TV show. Like, really? So you put your 13-year-old daughter through that whole embarrassing situation, asking us about these questions. We asked about trauma, physical abuse. You subjected your daughter to that abuse, right? Come to find out that you were lying and nothing ever happened. Yeah, it's horrible.
It is horrible what some people do for their, quote, 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah.
But Pam Harris in the chat group has a kind of, looks like a long and depth question. We'll see if we can get through this. It says, can you give me your thoughts about this? The Bible is mostly written by spirit, but most pastors, especially Baptists, I think that if you talk to spirits, that you're dealing with the devil. I think that the Bible being written mostly by spirit, because John, David, Luke.
Oh my gosh, Pam, yes, please. I love this. I agree with you. I had someone tell me the other day that, that being a paranormal investigator is demonic. It goes against it in the Bible. I go, show me exactly where in the Bible. Pam, I agree with you. I believe that, the word of God is the living, breathing word of God. But yes, we also see that Daniel had visions. We also see that a lot of these other people had visions from God, from spirit. They were communicating with spirit. So, and I don't want to get into theological debate. That's not my thing. I tell people it's really good that you have these questions. And if you feel this in your heart, then chances are that you've got full discernment of the Holy Spirit and God is talking to you. You can interpret the Bible how you want to. It's not my job to change your thought process. But I agree with Pam. I agree with that. I believe that psychic abilities, intuition, is a spiritual gift. and I'm not going to get into much to the things behind it. But I do believe that having these abilities are some sort of spiritual gift. And no, I don't think that you're demon possessed, and I don't think that you're going to hell. I don't. I think it's a form of a spiritual gift from God, from the Creator, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. One thing she says at the end, I just want to make sure we touch on, because I think a lot of people deal with this, is, do you feel like it goes against the laws that they're speaking to a spirit or listening to a spirit being evil?
Let me pull up that question again. They all had a message from the Spirit about what to write in the laws, so they think that speaking to spirit. Yeah, so here's the problem that we have today, Pam. And I don't mean to be, rash or harsh. I used to be Protestant growing up. I grew up Pentecostal and Baptist, and I was taught to hate the Catholic Church. And then going through seminary school, I realized that Catholic theology was right for me because it never changed. And there's a lot of misinterpretations. And so what I'm trying to get at, there's this thing called church legalism. Legalism is what's taught in the church by a man on the pulpit that has no discernment from God. In other words, what I'm saying is legalism says, yes, as a woman, you can come to church and serve God, but you have to wear long sleeves. You can't wear makeup. All right. That's legalism. Legalism is saying that if you don't come to church and you don't give me your body to marry you, you're going to go to hell. So you see what I mean? There's legalism. Basically, legalism is unscriptural, unbiblical teachings that's used for personal gain for man. And that's what I counsel people on. Church abuse and hurt from the church. That's called legalism. Legalism, yeah, it's unfortunately there's that fine line between legalism and actual biblical teachings. So people think that what you may be teaching is biblical, but in reality it's legalistic, it's legalism, and it's not from the Holy Spirit. It's not from God.
That's cool. And she goes on to say Daniel had visions. Why is that?
Because it was a gift from God.
I was going to say, that's a hard question to answer, Pam, because people get visions for different reasons, in my opinion.
Well, and the truth is, like, someone else can ask me this question and I can give them the same response, and they're going to say, well, you're a heretic, you're going to go to hell, and this is where I tell people, look, I don't mean to be egotistical, but I've studied these things for years. You know what I mean? I went to school for this type of stuff. I have a doctorate in divinity, and I've had to study different religions. I have to understand the idea. I have a master's in pastoral counseling. I have to understand logic. I have to understand thought process. I have to understand emotions. And so my overall analysis is how I see things, and that's how I put it into my perspective, into what I think it is. Does it mean that I'm right? Maybe not, but I always try to give a good, truthful, wholehearted message from my experience of what I think is coming through me, through the Creator.
Well, and I'm sure we all appreciate that. And so we've kind of hinted around, your work with the paranormal. What drew you into the paranormal field? Do you consider yourself in the paranormal field?
Oh yeah, very much so. So as a paranormal investigator, yeah, I'm a paranormal investigator. I actually grew up I actually had a really bad haunting growing up. This one was actually a demonic entity. So when I was growing up in New Jersey, I was born in New York, raised in New Jersey my whole life. We lived in Paterson, New Jersey. And so we moved to a location that had, activity. It was pretty bad to the point where, we would look out the window sometimes and we'd see this little girl going up the room. It was really bad, to the point where our dog ended up missing, and we found him a week later, crucified and gutted open. The people below us, before us, were satanic worshipers. Anyway, it was a really bad situation, and that's a personal story. But my sister was involved, she came under oppression, so to speak. But by the time we got done with that situation, we moved out. We realized that the people that lived there before us, we found pictures of naked children in dirty underwear. They were child molesters. So we think a lot of the activity that they were doing before we were there had an influence in that demonic entity that was attacking us.
Wow. And so, what do you feel that kind of, does that taint your, so to speak, or create a bias of when you're going into cases, somewhat of your history, or do you have a trick of separating?
No, it's separate. I can't be biased when I go into a situation, so to speak. I can't let my personal experiences dictate on whether or not, how I'm going to work this case. Everyone has different experiences, and everyone goes through different things. So I can't certainly equate my experience to someone else's experience. What this experience has done, it has helped me understand that there are supernatural, darker forces out there that are there to maliciously hurt other people. And it's a scary thing. It's a scary thing to go through. And so my sole goal is to help the family out the very best way that I can with love, compassion, and kindness.
All right. Well, that's a blessing in itself to be able to do that. Aaron is asking, half-truths will always look like truth until you get to the truth that isn't true, just a sugar-coated falsity.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I agree with him. I agree.
Yeah. And so, Pam has a nice message for you. She says, thank you so much for verifying exactly what I believe. My pastor has gone as far as to call my husband at work twice now because I have stopped going to church but continued my studies in the Bible.
You know what? I'm proud of you, that decision. It's really hard. Clergy are supposed to be understanding and loving. And just because the clergy may not agree with it, there are other ways and avenues of approach to talk to, your parishioner about it. Help me understand what you're thinking. It's not just, well, because I'm saying this, it's wrong. No, and I encourage every person who is a believer of Christ, go out there, study scripture, go to church, do the best that you can, but also um, get your own understanding. Because what's happened, and this is why there's a lot of church extremism. That's why there's a lot of extremism in church, extremism in Christianity, is that people will go to church and they will listen to a man on the pulpit, but they won't even do any research. They won't even read the Bible themselves. And everything that person feeds them, they'll believe it. And so they'll go walking around like a zombie because, well, my pastor said this, and now this is how I have to think. No, do your own research.
All right. So Eli has brought up a question that we've somewhat answered, but I'm going to ask it and I'm going to put a little twist on it, if that's okay, Eli. Do you think God gives psychic visions or is it gifts? And my twist to that is, when you're working with people and you start to see them reacting differently, do you go in and say, okay, well, this is your gift, so you're doing your thing? Or do you say, okay, I don't know what you're doing, but I think you've been compromised. You need to step out and we need to look at what your gift is and if this is a gift or what's going on here?
Once again, I don't ever question the psychic. I think these are gifts. Now, what I'm looking for is, if that psychic that I'm working with, if they're feeling sick or ill, then I'll say, hey, you know what? Maybe we should go outside, get some fresh air. Uh, but that's as far as I'll go. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, you've been compromised. I don't know those things because I'm not a mind reader. That's not my job. I believe we all have our own specific gift and specific ability. Now, I will always look out for the well-being of my team and, especially my psychic. If my psychic says, hey, Padre, I'm not feeling too well, this energy that's coming through is not so well. Okay, cool. Let's take a break. Let's take a pause. Let's go back outside and let's get some fresh air. And then we'll reconvene. Safety is always important to me.
Right. I'm just meaning because when you're on some locations, like I may start talking a little differently and start moving from room to room a little differently, and it's out of character. And so, the people that I investigate with will pull me out and say, look, are you okay? I think you need to ground. And I think that's where I was going with my question to you is,
Oh yeah, I mean,
you
if it's like
know,
if it's like erratic behavior, you mean like if it's
right?
erratic behavior, yeah, if it's erratic behavior, you can normally kind of just see that it's erratic behavior. But sometimes, I've learned too from my experience. Sometimes you just have to let the person with the ability to do the work. Sometimes that energy that's manifesting through them, that's how they're conducting their work. And I certainly don't want to intervene when that psychic medium is conducting their work. I don't want to break that connection abruptly because that can also have dire consequences. It's like when someone is sleepwalking and you yell out their name really quick, you know, they say that you can have a heart attack or potentially, die. So I'll be there. I'll be observant. If I see that you're walking into any physical risks, I'll try to guide you out the way and protect you. But I will always let you work. I will always let the individual work their way. But if it's erratic behavior and it's going to start turning into something destructive or dangerous, then maybe pull them out of it and say, hey, you know what? Let's go outside and get some fresh air. Because at that time, that individual is a conduit, and people react differently when they are being used as a conduit for energy.
I'm so glad you brought that up, and I was kind of not sure how to word that because it's something being a channel that sometimes I deal with being the conduit, and people don't understand the impact that could have. So thank you for bringing that up and wording it in that way.
You're welcome, and that's why it's important, for people to understand. That's why you've got to be experienced in this field. That's why it's always good to have a good relationship with your psychic, with your medium, with your team members. You get to know them. You get to know how they work. You get to know how they operate. And that's always important. You have to understand the dynamics of the team. If you don't, then unfortunately, it's not going to be a good dynamic at all.
Right. So Aaron has a interesting question for you. He says the Bible has references of spiritual entities that are neither good or evil, just serving a purpose. Is it possible to encounter these in paranormal investigations?
I suppose it is. I've never encountered. Well, I mean, I would say like a neutral spirit. I would say more that's like a human spirit. Uh, it just all depends what you believe in. But I surmise that it's possible to encounter these things. I mean, the only thing I've really encountered is just like a human spirits being afraid to cross over. Obviously, I've done 3 documented exorcisms. But other than that, it's a learning experience. And that's what I tell people. I don't know everything. I don't have all the answers. Is it possible? Sure. But I've never encountered it.
Okay. And we kind of have touched on this a couple of times, but I want to be clear because I think this is an important thing for paranormal investigators to keep an eye on. Does mental health play a factor in the paranormal claims and experiences?
It absolutely does. Mental health is an important factor when it comes to paranormal investigations. It works. There's a duality to that as well. There's a study by psychologists that show that most paranormal investigators are investigating because they have suffered a traumatic event, and that's how they want to express their grief. Also, with that being said, mental health is important because you want to be able to make sure that you are mentally safe and mentally prepared to go into any situation that you might be able to encounter, which is why we say, like in the military, get your affairs in order. If you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling tired, if you're exhausted, if you had a really bad argument with your spouse, with your partner, it's probably not wise to do an investigation that night. It's probably not wise to do an interview because your mental health can have an effect on you. Look, not every spirit is negative, but at the same time, why would you want to open yourself and be mentally, emotionally weak? Not only that, though, your emotions, play a big factor in it. You want to be able to make sure that you're there to give your client the very best of yourself. And if you're not at 100%, you have to be able to realize, you know what, Padre Ken, I'm not 100% today. I'm feeling depressed and sad. I'm going to have to step away. Not a problem. I can respect that. Because what we don't want to do is we don't want to give the client the wrong information. We don't want to have a negative influence. We don't want to get the wrong answers. It's all about, being as honest as possible. And that means being honest within ourselves.
Right. And that brings up a good point because I feel like there's a lot of times when paranormal investigators are not at their peak, not at their best, but they feel like I still got to do this because the client needs me. And so they'll start to put their needs ahead of theirs.
Yeah. And that's a very noble thing to do, and I've certainly done that myself. There's been times when I'm not feeling good. But sometimes you just have to know when to say and let the client know, hey, you know what, I'm not feeling good right now. At the moment, I'm a little under the weather. Let me contact you when I feel better and reconvene from there. It's a noble thing to want to be able to help the client out. That's perfectly fine. That's admirable. It is. But you always got to take care of yourself, because if you're no good to yourself, you're not going to be good to your team or your client.
I appreciate that because, yeah, that is something I think we all try to do the noble thing and
Yeah.
best represent. And sometimes it comes at the cost of, and trying to do our best.
Yeah.
We're not feeling our best. We're like, well, I did the best I could. And it's like, that's not the way you should go at it.
Yeah, human beings, we are resilient creatures. And when we are dedicated to a certain goal, when we want to achieve something, we go for it. And that's admirable. But what we need to also remember is that we always need to take care of ourselves. Your health and your family are always important. You just don't want to compromise any of that. You don't want to compromise your health just because, well, the client needs me. The client can wait a day. The client can wait a few days. If you're not feeling good and you're sick and you're struggling with mental illness, if you've got the flu or something, just take a break. There's nothing wrong with taking a break and stepping away. There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely. You're not. And if the client can't see that and can't respect that, then chances are you're dealing with the wrong client, and I would step away. If the client doesn't respect my personal space, doesn't respect that I'm not feeling good, and at that moment I can't give him my all, then maybe you shouldn't be working with that client.
Right. And I think Scott brings out a good point too that we don't really think about is he goes, some nights you just don't feel right. Spirit's always going to be there. So
Yeah.
put your best foot forward and all is good. That's true. The spirits aren't going anywhere. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
and Eli brings up a point we haven't really touched on is he's saying like if you go uncompromised, you may go home with an attachment. Do you ever have to deal with attachments?
Yes, I was on a case a few months ago where it was transient energy. It was a residential investigation. It was at an apartment complex, and so we went to the client's house and we conducted an interview. We set up some equipment. We got a couple of hits on some of our meters, but then we also realized that a lot of the energy that he was facing was transient energy. The neighbor next to him and his wife were always fighting, arguing. There's a lot of physical abuse. So a lot of that energy was carrying over. They literally were separated by, a 6-inch sheetrock. And so, that night when we left, I was like, okay, cool. I pray for the team. I bless the team. Uh, but I don't know what happened. I got home and all three of my dogs ended up getting seizures. They've never had seizures. All three of my dogs ended up getting seizures. And what it was is that one of my psychic mediums wasn't feeling well. And so, although I did the protection and the blessing, they weren't guarded and they didn't really accept that protection, the prayer. And so, when they came into my house, saw my dogs, they got seizures. So, I had to go back outside, sprinkle them with holy water, pray for them to make sure they got better. And a few minutes later, my dogs were happy go lucky. But my dogs have never had a seizure. All three of them at the same time ended up getting seizures. Now, it could have been something outside of the environment, but they're in the house and they didn't get into anything. They have a set schedule of food and snacks that they have. So who knows? But yes, I've had that issue.
Yeah, and I was gonna say the fact that all three happened at the exact same time is really limits it down to because they probably weren't playing in the same spot at the same time. So that rules that out.
Well, to come home and then go see my dogs and they get excited and all of a sudden they see me and then they all start shaking and they start seizing up and vomiting. That was a scary thing.
Yeah.
That was again another reminder of, why, it's important to always protect yourself. And I go, what did I do wrong? Because as a clergyman, yes, I have feelings and I have emotions. And of course, I'm going to get stressed. And of course, I'm going to feel certain things. So, these are my service animals, because I'm a veteran and these are like my service animals. These are my babies. I love them. What did I do wrong? And I realized that maybe one of my other teammates, may have brought something home. So it's important to ground yourself. Yes, I have brought an attachment home.
Okay. And how did you become a part of the Warren Legacy Foundation?
I'm going on 3 years with the Warren Legacy Foundation. I applied for the Warren Legacy Foundation a few years ago. At that time, we had two directors running it. They've since moved on. The wonderful Catherine Cirillos, and then we had another director. Her name was Michelle Roos. They were running the foundation in the UK and here, and Chris, also the CEO. I applied and I conducted the interview with him, and then I got on. So I wasn't expecting to get on, but it was a pretty stringent application process. I had to do a 6-page application, had to do background check, I had to do references, I had to provide casework, and then we conducted the interview. And then from there, they made a decision. And ever since then, it's been smooth sailing. Those two women have now moved on to other ventures. But since with the foundation, I've worked on over 200 cases. I've moved from being a regional director to now I am a division director. I'm in charge of, well, I'm not in charge. That's a horrible word, but I lead the Spanish division. I have 26 other members in front of me, and I have 4 regional directors that manage their own regions. And I have an assistant director, Monica Camacho, as well as being a board member for the foundation.
Cool. Now, we talked about this backstage, and so we've come to that moment that I told you about. So, what are your feelings about how people are now starting to come out of the woodworks since Lorraine has passed away and saying, oh, all their casework was faked. They just did it for publicity and to sell books?
To that I say, you're entitled to your opinion, and that's perfectly fine that you think that. What I don't like is talking ill will of the dead. Lorraine has passed on, Ed has passed on. Obviously, Lorraine created this foundation that I work for. And so I don't care what people think. I really don't. The truth is, whether or not you like the Warrens, they had left a lasting impact in the paranormal field, and everybody wants to be like the Warrens. Everyone has seen The Conjuring, The Nun, the Amityville Horror. So whether or not you like them, most people are in this field because of them, whether you want to admit it or not. I think where it lies in now, people are getting comfortable enough to say these certain things because, they know they can say it without repercussion. But the truth is, we don't care. I don't care what you think.
Yeah, and that's really cool because I always feel like there's enough drama in the world. Why do we need to bring it into the paranormal field?
Yeah, they're deceased. They've moved on. Look. I think it's fine to say. Maybe some of their story. And here's where the issue is. I think many people confuse the movies for their actual casework. Hollywood is Hollywood. They have to sell movies. So while you will find snippets of truth within those movies, it's not all actual occurrence. We're not saying that, the 12-year-old Jody was climbing up the wall backwards. That's Hollywood. So people confuse Hollywood for their actual casework. And look, there's a lot of haters out there. And to you, I say, God bless you. I don't care about you. I don't, you're entitled to feel what you feel. And that's fine. But, it bothers you enough to talk about them because that means you had a problem with them. Probably jealousy. When people talk about the Warrens, they're probably jealous. And that's the truth. There's a lot of older investigator teams out there, especially this duo, that, would say certain things about them. But I go, that's fine, but they're gone now. You can't even say it to their face because they're deceased.
Right. And I think that's an important thing too, is when we watch paranormal TV shows and paranormal movies or quote unquote true stories or shock docs that they're doing now on the paranormal, is if it's coming from Hollywood, I was always told Hollywood is about 90 to 95% entertainment to sell, 3% maybe total fact, 5%
Yeah.
and 2% the gray area that they're like, well, this could have happened. We don't know. We'll throw it in
Yeah.
there because it'll make it look better.
Well, yeah, just like Chris will tell you, the grandson of the Warrens, Chris McKinnell, he is the CEO of the foundation, and he found it with Lorraine, and he will tell you, some of the movies that they've made are not completely and accurately true, because that's what James Wan wanted to do. You have to sell something in Hollywood. A lot of cases too that the Warrens, I surmise me, have had weren't always darker in nature. They've had thousands of cases, but the cases that you hear are the ones that have left a lasting impact in their career. And we talk about it because these things are true. But it wasn't always ghosts, goblins, and demons. It was about going out there, helping people, and educating the public. They were the true pioneers of the paranormal. Besides besides Hans Holzer, and so yeah, I don't care. I don't even care what people think about me. If you don't like me, that's fine. If you like me, that's fine. I don't care. I'm a cool guy. You get to know me, but I really just don't care what you feel about me, what you think about me. That's the truth.
And that's the best way to be. And, bringing up Hans Holzer, I like watching the Holzer files because it shows his work in advance, and
Yeah.
then it's their work, and then they compare at the end, going, "Well, did we prove this? Did we not prove this?"
I really enjoy the Holzer files. I love it. And actually, as a matter of fact, Ed and Lorraine Warren were big fans of Hans Holzer. They actually had a few run-ins years ago. I mean, that's like paranormal greatness right there. I love, that obviously, methodology has changed, equipment has changed, but, we have detailed history and documentation of the unknown, the unexplained, way before any of us were born. And I think that's a beautiful thing to keep. I think record keeping is beautiful. And, you can take it with a grain of salt, but there's something to learn in everything.
Right. So we're approaching our hour, and so before our hour's up, if people have concerns or want to get in touch with you for any paranormal questions or any questions about stuff they're experiencing, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
So you can contact me on my Facebook profile. And if you're having a problem with the paranormal, you can go to warrenfiles.com, warrenfiles.com, and then go to contact us. And then somebody will be happy to reach out. Depending on your geographical location, you'll have a director reach out. But you can contact me here on Facebook. You can share my personal profile. You can find me on fatherkendoctor.com, spelled out completely. But yeah, that's where you'll find me.
Cool. And so one thing I'm finding that kind of is an interesting thing is with the end of the show is what advice do you have for paranormal investigators or people maybe of the clergy that, are wanting to do like you do with the supernatural paranormal but feel like they can't?
Follow your heart, because the paranormal, it has a negative connotation. It has a negative connotation, but there's also a science behind it. Paranormal investigations is a science, whether or not you want to, it's a pseudoscience, but whether or not you want to believe it, that's the truth. Follow your heart, think critically, always ask questions, and don't settle for the first response that you get. Don't be satisfied. Yearn to learn more, thirst for knowledge, thirst for quest. Put yourself on a quest of enlightenment, and learn everything that you can. But overall, be kind. We are all people in process. We all go through different seasons of our life, but be kind. Yeah, that's Ron Stokes. That's one of my deacons from my religious order. So yeah, be kind, everyone. Be kind. That's all that matters. You don't always have to agree on religion. You don't always have to agree on politics. You don't always have to agree on sexual preference. but you need to be kind to one another and be loving and understanding of one another. If anything, love is key. And that's my advice.
So, Kel, any questions you got over there?
I haven't really got any questions. Apart from, do you see a difference with the supernatural and paranormal?
Like, do I see a difference?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I believe in aliens, UFOs, chupacabra. I believe in all that stuff. I mean, the supernatural, the paranormal is, supernatural in its nature. So I would see them go hand in hand, to be honest with you. I think the supernatural and paranormal go hand in hand. I mean, these are just things that we can't explain.
Yeah.
Supernatural, yeah. It's also a good show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good show.
Yeah.
I just want to say anyway, there's been a few comments why I've been so quiet. I've been a little bit unwell today, so I asked Michael beforehand if he could take over. And I just couldn't miss this because I really want to have this interview with Kenneth. So that's why I've been a bit quiet.
I appreciate you having me on. Sorry if it was boring, but
Hell no.
I'm more of an educator. I do that.
Yeah.
I do lectures. I'm all about education, and a lot of people may not agree with me, and that's okay. It's okay. But what's not okay is to be disrespectful. We can have a difference in opinions, and we can find a common ground.
Definitely.
Ken, I love the fact that you consider this whole hour was boring because we're like super excited. So, what is excited to you? Like, God, I'm one now. I'm really curious of what would be an exciting.
Well, no, sometimes I find myself repetitious and boring, and people are like, I don't really care. It's a man in the cloth, clergy speaking. He doesn't know anything. Blah blah blah. But I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad. I'm just self-critical of myself. It's the doctor in me that's going back on what maybe I should have said, but I'm pretty content with everything. I think honestly, this is a great platform, and what you're doing is wonderful, phenomenal. You guys had Dr. Heatherly Landon on a few days ago. I love her. She's my sister. She's also a board member for the foundation. I love that, and I definitely love the question that you asked her about self-possession. Self-possession in the sense of having enlightenment, being grounded, being protected, and being strong mentally and physically, so that these alien energies can't affect you. So that was a really good question on self-possession.
Well, thank you. And we try to come up with questions that I hope you don't get asked a lot because, like you're saying, if we ask the same thing that several other people have asked, it does
it's all right.
The interviews going, the excitement's drowning because they're like, I already know what question's coming next, so I can tune out.
No, I love talking. I love giving my advice and my opinion on what my representation of the paranormal is, my representation, my expression of my faith, and how I view things. It's always really good to get to know one another.
Yeah. So my last question to you for the show is, what place or location that you haven't been to would you love to go and investigate, have a case? Now I'm going to put a twist on it, going international and in the U.S.
Oh, you know what? I knew that was coming. Seems psychic here. Honestly, I'm 30 minutes away from Alcatraz, and I've never been there. I live in San Francisco, literally 30 minutes away. I think I'd want to go to Alcatraz because I've gone to the Winchester House. Internationally,
wow.
I think I just probably want to go to Scotland and enjoy the castles out there and see if I can encounter a banshee. Yes, that's what I want. Did I say it right? Banshee.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And then even Vladimir's castle, Dracula's castle.
I'm actually sure banshees are Irish. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm sure they're. But no mind. But yeah, I know what you mean.
I think that's a question for Barry Fitzgerald.
Yeah. No, there's so many places to explore around the world. So what I plan on doing is, since I am the director of the Spanish region for the foundation, I actually have a goal, working on something. travel to different parts of the world and investigate and show people how the paranormal manifests itself according to their culture and to their religion. Because the paranormal manifests itself in different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you, Stephen.
Yeah,
fine. I
I'm
don't
trying
even
living like 2 minutes away from it. It's not that exciting.
Hadrian, I don't even know what that is. What's
Hadrian's
Hadrian's
Wall.
Wall?
Hadrian's Wall, the wall that Rome built to separate the Roman part of England from the, was it the Saxons
The
and
Scots
the
and the
Oh,
Picts.
Scots and the Picts?
oh, okay. Yeah, never knew that.
Yeah, it's 2,000 years of history, and it's like 200 yards up the road from where I live. And I still haven't investigated it yet.
You know, America, we're babies. You know, we are babies. 1775? Ha, yeah, right, America. 1100s, 1000s, 1200s.
Ooh, you get a break. Pam has a question for you, Kel.
Would I go to a castle to investigate? I've been to quite a few castles. I actually nearly rented a house with a castle room in the garden. So, yeah, there's loads of them around here, the ruins. So half of them I didn't even know was here. So they're in abundance around here. So yeah.
So, actually, in listening to your where you wanted to go, a question popped in my head that, because you mentioned a spot that's like on my list, and I think it's on a lot of paranormal investigators' dream list, is Winchester.
Oh, yes.
What is that house really like, energy-wise, inside, and is it really as they say and portray it, or is it more like just a house?
So, like the 4 or 5 times I've gone to the Winchester house, you know, I live an hour away. It's by San Jose. I've encountered like shadow figures out the corner of my eye, you know, some cold spots. You know, during the day, you're not going to get so much activity because you have a lot of group tours. But at night, that's when it starts popping off. And that's when you get the activity. EMF detectors going off, footsteps. But the thing with the Winchester Mystery House is you have to be careful because you end up walking around that house and you'll open a door and you'll actually fall to the second floor, you know, because Sarah made doors that led to nowhere. So,
Wow.
Right.
yeah.
So,
That's
what's
definitely
your
on my
take-
list too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's your take on the story of, was she really guided by the spirits to build the doors and the rooms the way they were, or do you think it was a mental condition that was misdiagnosed?
No, you know, I would say, you know, for all intents and purposes, I don't think it was a mental illness. I think those were her convictions. You know, her gun, her family's gun won the West, you know, and basically, you know, she probably felt guilty. That was probably her response, her trauma response, you know, but she was spiritual. She conducted seances as well. So all of that stuff is true. There's a picture of her in the museum of her conducting seances as well. I believe her. I believe her.
Yeah. Oh, Cal, you started talking. You're getting popular now.
Yeah, I want to investigate everywhere in the USA, so I would investigate in Indiana, yeah, definitely.
And
Hopefully
Kel,
one
you
day.
know Ray, right? We were connected
Yeah.
through Ray Savino, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I know, Ray.
My buddy.
Yeah. I was talking to him today, actually, so
Oh, awesome.
good guy.
Yeah. He's a great guy.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, smooth talking Italian.
Aren't all Italians?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think Ken may have come across some Italians that, aren't so smooth talking.
What happened? It happens. Oh my gosh, this has been so fun.
It has.
Yeah. No, it's
We'll have
cool.
to get you on again sometime, especially when I'm feeling a little bit better, so I can ask you a load of questions as well. So
That's fine. Yeah. No, I'd love to come back. It'd be an honor to come back. Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. I used to have my own little radio podcast on the Paranormal King Radio Network, but then we had to shut down because Ross decided to take some personal time off. But I used to have my own show called Enter the Dark, and it would be every second and fourth Tuesday, and we would definitely have some good conversations.
Oh, I've just been told that my grandson's watching, so I have to say hello to Theo. Hi, Theo.
Mm.
So
I
Steven
appreciate it.
says, yeah, he's got a couple places for
Well,
you.
I love New Mexico. I was just in Santa Fe a few years ago and Taos, New Mexico. Taos, yeah, Taos. I love it out there. I was doing an event for called Horses for Hero. It's an event for combat veterans, and they go and they do equine therapy and work with horses. I was there for a whole week. I loved New Mexico. I love it out there.
Excellent.
Yeah, New Mexico is really beautiful land. And unfortunately,
especially
for me,
Sedona.
it's like a full day's drive to get there.
Yeah, and I think there's this place in New Mexico called Sedona. I think that's where it's called. I think it's Sedona.
Is
I don't know
that
if it's
in
Sedona,
Arizona?
Is it Sedona, Arizona?
Yeah.
Sedona's in
okay.
Arizona.
Okay, but I know it's nearby, and it's like this beautiful place.
Yeah.
What's up, man? Semper Fi. I was in the Marine Corps. Yeah, the program is called Horses for Hero, out there in New Mexico.
Awesome.
Well, folks, we've come to the end, so we want to thank Father Kenneth Torres for taking some time and talking with us, and to everyone in the chat group. And Kell, we hope you do feel better, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you for hosting for us. For us.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah.
We've really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's been brilliant.
It has, and since normally Kell's the one that sends it off, I will send it off in the style of the way I do on our show on Tuesday nights. Is if you're going to go investigating this weekend, be safe and have fun. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Good night. Good night.